The hum of my tires against the asphalt was the only sound for miles. The night had swallowed up the world, leaving just my sedan and a stretch of endless highway. I was returning from a work conference, my mind a fog of figures and handshakes, when the glaring orange of my fuel gauge caught my eye. Almost empty. Great, with a wary sigh, I took the next exit, the sign reading gas, next right like a prophecy. The exit ramp curled into darkness, leading me to a gas station that time forgot. It was an island of faded paint and rust, the kind of place that might have been charming once with its retro vibes and promise of Americana. But now it was just eerie, the neon sign buzzing and sputtering, announcing open in a flicker of desperation to draw people to it. I pulled up to the lone pump, my headlights cutting through the gloom. The station was silent, save for the occasional pop of cooling metal from my car. I stepped out, the chill of the night wrapping around me like a cold blanket. My breath misted in the air as I fumbled with the gas cap and shoved the nozzle into the tank. That's when I noticed the attendant's booth. It was a small, boxy structure, the windows so coated in grime that they reflected the fluorescent lights in a sickly glow. Inside, I could just make out the outline of a chair and a stack of dog-eared magazines, but no attendant. A shiver ran down my spine, and I told myself it was just the night air. I tried to focus on the numbers ticking over on the pump, but a soft scraping sound drew my attention. It was coming from behind the booth, like the sound of shoes on gravel. I strained my ears, listening. The scraping stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence that felt heavy, expectant. I shook my head, chastising myself for getting spooked. "Get a grip," I muttered under my breath. But then came the tapping, a soft, rhythmic sound against glass. I turned slowly, my heart thudding in my chest, to see a face peering out from the booth's window. It was pale, almost luminescent against the darkness, framed by the straggly edges of unwashed hair. The eyes were wide and unblinking, the white stark against the shadowed hollows of their sockets, and the smile, God, that smile. It was too wide, too knowing, as if it were privy to a secret that would shatter my world. I need any help out there. The voice was jarring in its normalcy, a stark contrast to the twisted grin that remained unchanging. I struggled to reply, my voice a hoarse whisper. "No thanks, just filling up." "That's good." "Real good," the attendant said, the tapping continuing, a steady beat that seemed to echo in the stillness. "You be careful on these roads. Lots of folks go missing around here. Never know who or what you might run into." The way he said, "what," sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I nodded, my movement stiff and robotic, and backed away from the window. I couldn't tear my gaze from those eyes, those terrible, unblinking eyes that seemed to see right through me. I nearly stumbled in my haste to get back to the car, my hand shaking as I yanked the nozzle from the tank, not bothering to check if it had automatically stopped. The gas cap lay forgotten on the ground as I jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, locking it instinctively. I fired up the engine, the familiar purr doing nothing to comfort me. I glanced in the rearview mirror and flinched. The attendant was standing outside the booth now, just watching as I peeled away from the pump and back onto the road. His silhouette was etched into the night, a dark sentinel against the glow of the station. The drive home was an exercise in paranoia. Every shadow seemed to lurch towards the road. Every rustle of leaves was a footstep, and every pair of distant headlights felt like the unblinking eyes of the attendant. Following, watching, I was a live wire, every sense dialed to 11, expecting at any moment for the world to drop out from under me. My mind replayed the scene at the gas station. The attendant's face burned into my memory like a brand. Every so often, I'd glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that same twisted smile in the backseat. I flinched when an owl swooped across the road, its white underbelly a ghostly specter in the night. Finally, the familiar turn into my neighborhood came as a salvation. The streetlights felt like guardians as I pulled into my driveway, the soft orange glow a stark contrast to the pitch black of the roads I'd left behind. My hands were still trembling as I killed the engine. The silence of the car a sudden, deafening void. I sat there for a moment, trying to convince myself I was safe. That's when I heard it, a soft scratching coming from the roof of the car. It was deliberate, paced, like the tapping of the attendant's fingers on the glass. My breath hitched, and I was frozen, a chill running down my spine. I didn't want to look, didn't want to confirm my fears. With a surge of reckless courage, I flung the door open and bolted for the safety of my house. I didn't look back until I was inside, the door locked firmly behind me. Peering through the window, I expected the worst, but there was nothing, just my car, quiet and still under the streetlight. The relief was overwhelming, but it was laced with an edge of fear that I knew wouldn't leave me. I was home, yes, but the terror of that night's encounter clung to me like the after-image of a nightmare. As dawn's first light began to seep into the sky, I made a silent vow. No more night drives, no more lonely gas stations, and no more looking into the abyss, lest it decide to look back into me. The clock on my dashboard read 2:17 a.m., the kind of hour where the world holds its breath and even the crickets seem to sleep. I was on the road back from a buddy's wedding, the kind that went on too long and ended with too many goodbyes. The drive was supposed to be a straight shot back, a couple of hours through stretches of farmland and patches of forest that the GPS claimed was the fastest route home. The night was thick around me, a tapestry of darkness pierced only by my headlights. The road was empty, a black ribbon unwinding beneath me with every hum of the engine. That's when it started, a subtle feeling, like static on the back of my neck. You know, the kind that makes you think you're not alone, even when you're pretty sure you are. At first, I shrugged it off as fatigue, the remnants of a long night nipping at my consciousness. But then in the rearview mirror, I caught a flash. Headlights, far back but coming up fast. Odd, considering I hadn't seen another soul for miles. I gripped the wheel a little tighter, chalking it up to some night owl or a trucker on a long haul. The lights grew brighter, closer, and I could feel a tinge of annoyance. Great, one of those high-beam lovers, I muttered, adjusting the mirror to keep from being blinded. But as the vehicle drew nearer, it didn't pass. It just stayed there, a relentless pair of bright eyes fixed on my tail. My heart started to thump harder. There was something off about this. Why not just overtake me? The road was empty, straight as an arrow, and I sure wasn't breaking any speed records. I tested a theory, speeding up a little. The lights behind me matched my pace. I slowed. So did they. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. This wasn't right. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising panic. Maybe they're just messing with you, I thought. But the comfort of logic was a flimsy shield against the growing fear that I was being hunted by something unseen, something with intentions cloaked in shadow. The next few miles were a blur of glances in the mirror and the growing sense of dread. I decided to lose this creeper. Up ahead, a turnoff approached, a dirt road that promised the anonymity of trees, and the chance to circle back to the main road further on. I flicked on my blinker, feigning an upcoming turn, and at the last second, I veered onto the dirt path, gravel spitting under my tires. I held my breath, waiting for the headlights to fly by, but they didn't. Instead, they paused at the turnoff, hesitated, and then, with a deliberate slowness, they turned onto the dirt road after me. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. This is insane, I whispered to myself, pushing my car faster along the uneven road. The headlights were a constant presence, a predator's gaze that I couldn't shake. I squinted through the rear window, trying to make out a license plate, a car model, anything. But it was just the blinding light and the dust my car kicked up, obscuring any detail. The dirt road wound through the woods, a narrow path that felt like it was closing in on me. Branches reached out like fingers, scraping against the sides of my car with a sound that sent shivers down my spine. I had to get out of there, had to find my way back to the safety of streetlights and civilization. I spotted a chance, a fork in the road, one path leading back towards the main road, the other diving deeper into the dark woods. I took the turn so sharply, my tires skidded, fighting for traction. A glance in the mirror told me the other car had stopped at the fork, idling like a beast unsure which way its prey had gone. I didn't wait to see which path it chose. I barreled down the road, my heart pounding, until the glow of the headlights behind me was nothing more than a memory. When I finally emerged onto the main road, the sky was beginning to lighten, the first hints of dawn casting a pale blue over the horizon. I drove straight home, not stopping, not even daring to look in the mirror until I was safely in my garage. The relief was immense, but it was tinged with an unease that lingered long after the engine was cut and the keys were in my pocket. Who, or what, had been behind me on that road? And what might have happened if they had caught up? I never found out, and I'm okay with never finding out. But some nights, when the darkness seems too intent on pressing against my windows, I can't help but wonder. The fear of that night has a way of creeping back in, a shadow that lurks just out of sight. I've made a few changes since then. I avoid driving late at night whenever I can, and I've installed a dash cam just in case. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself scanning the rearview mirror a little too often, searching for a pair of headlights that shouldn't be there. My friends tell me I'm paranoid, that it was probably just some bored local having a bit of fun with a stranger. But there was something in the persistence of that pursuit, in the way those lights seemed to burn with a purpose, that tells me it wasn't just a harmless prank. Sometimes I'll drive by that same stretch of highway during the day, the sun high and the fields golden and serene. It's hard to imagine the fear that consumed me under that same sky turned dark, but the contrast only serves to remind me that there are two sides to everything: the seen and the unseen, the light and the dark, the safe and the perilous. I've heard stories since then, whispers of a local legend, a tale of a phantom car that appears on the road, chasing low-night drivers to the brink of madness. I try not to listen, try not to think that maybe I was part of something otherworldly that night. But when the sun sets and the world quiets down, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, on a lonely stretch of road, the unseen pursuer is waiting for its next midnight chase. And all I can do is hope that our paths never cross again. The night was a shroud, and the road ahead was a vein of faint moonlight snaking through the darkness. I was driving home from a late shift, the kind that leaves your mind buzzing and your body craving sleep. The road was a shortcut, a narrow strip of asphalt that cut through an old part of the woods locals called the Whispers. I never bought into the ghost stories, but that night, the road lived up to its name. It started with the rustle of leaves, a soft sound that seemed too deliberate, too close, as if something was moving just beyond the reach of my headlights. I told myself it was just the wind, just the nocturnal creatures foraging in the underbrush. But then came the first thing that made me question that logic. A child's tricycle, lying on its side, right in the middle of the road. I slowed down, the sight jarring in the otherwise desolate stretch. The tricycle was rusted, one wheel still spinning lazily. It looked abandoned, forgotten, except for how deliberately it had been placed there. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Who would leave that there? I thought, my foot hovering between the brake and the gas. That's when I saw it, a shadow, fleeting and indistinct, darting off into the trees. My heart kicked against my ribs. I was alone out here, or at least I was supposed to be. I considered getting out, checking if there was a kid out there who needed help, but something inside me, a primal instinct, screamed that it was a bad idea. I drove on, the tricycle now a speck in my rearview mirror, but the unease it stirred stayed with me. The road seemed to close in, the trees leaning towards the asphalt as if they were spectators to some grim parade. And then came the whispers, a susurration that seemed to rise from the road itself, words just beyond understanding, skittering across my consciousness. I tried to focus on the drive, on the hum of the engine and the feel of the steering wheel under my palms. But the road wasn't done with me yet. The road felt narrower as I drove on, the shadows from the overhanging trees, casting strange, shifting patterns on the asphalt. It was then that I spotted her, a woman standing on the shoulder, her figure illuminated in the stuttering glow of my headlights. She was dressed in a tattered white gown that seemed to drink in the darkness, her hair a wild tangle around a face I couldn't quite see. As my car neared, she raised her arm in a slow, deliberate motion that sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Her hand was clutching something small and dark. Before I could even process what was happening, she hurled the object at my car with startling force. It struck the passenger window with a loud crack, a spiderweb of lines instantly spreading across the glass. I gasped, swerving instinctively as my heart tried to hammer its way out of my chest. The figure in the white dress didn't move, didn't chase. She just stood there, as if her only intent had been to mark my car, to mark me, with a warning. I didn't stop to see what she'd thrown. The primal part of my brain was already flooring the gas pedal, urging me to get as far away as possible. As the car sped away, the whispers that had been a subtle undercurrent before surged into an urgent chorus, filling the car despite the windows being sealed shut. They were louder now, more insistent, a cacophony of hushed tones that seemed to be both a reprimand and a harbinger. My hands were shaking so badly that it was a struggle to keep the steering wheel steady. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the woman giving chase or, worse, sitting in my backseat. But there was only the empty road, the cracked window a testament to the reality of the encounter. My breaths came in ragged gasps, the cold air biting at the back of my throat. The road continued to unfurl, a relentless gray strip that felt like it was leading me further into madness. I flinched every time a branch scraped against the car, each sound now magnified into a threat. I was a bundle of raw nerves, every sense strained for more signs of danger. The next few miles were a blur of adrenaline. My eyes darted from the road to the rearview mirror and back again, searching for any more anomalies, any more reasons to question my sanity. Then up ahead, something else in the road. This time, a pile of old, torn clothes scattered across the lane as if someone had undressed on the run. I slowed down, my breath caught in my throat, scanning the tree line for any sign of life. That's when the whispers crescendoed into a single, intelligible phrase, a voice that felt like it was speaking directly into my ear. "Don't stop." I didn't need to be told twice. I swerved around the close, my foot slamming back on the accelerator. The car's engine roared in protest as I pushed it to its limits, the trees blurring into a tunnel of green and black. The whispers faded back into the rustle of leaves in the night, but their warning echoed in my mind. As the road finally straightened out and the oppressive trees gave way to open fields, I felt a release in the air, a lifting of the weight that had pressed down on me since I turned onto the whispers. The whispers seemed to mock me now, a taunting melody that danced around the one clear thought left in my head. Drive, just drive. I pushed the car harder, the engine groaning in protest as I willed it to escape the suffocating embrace of the whispers. The road finally began to clear, the oppressive trees giving way to open fields, and the whispers faded into the night, leaving behind only the pounding of my heart and the hiss of the wind through the cracked window. When the first lights of civilization came into view, I almost wept with relief. The truck stop ahead was a sanctuary, its fluorescent glow a barrier against the night's terror. I pulled in and parked, my whole body trembling, as I finally allowed myself to take a full, deep breath. I rested my head on the steering wheel, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away, leaving a hollow exhaustion in its wake. As the sky began to lighten with the promise of dawn, I gathered the courage to inspect the damage to my window. Embedded in the glass, held by the fractured tendrils, was a small stone, a crude message, scratched into its surface, "Leave." I took the stone, a cold lump of dread settling in my stomach. I looked back the way I'd come, half expecting the road to reach out with tendrils of mist and pull me back in. But there was nothing, just a quiet country road bathed in the pale light of dawn. I never took that shortcut again. I told some friends about what happened, but their laughter and rational explanations couldn't erase the memory of that night. The road that whispers is out there, a stretch of asphalt that knows things it shouldn't, that sees things it shouldn't. And sometimes, when the night is still and the wind carries a certain chill, I can almost hear it calling me back, tempting me with its secrets and its shadows. But some things are better left unheard, some roads better left untraveled.